Welcome to the Profit by Design podcast. I am your host, Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist and founder of Tap the Potential. And I'm joined with Melissa. And we are bringing back Geeta Nadkarni. You may recall she came on episode 339 and shared about her experience with revamping her business after experiencing chronic illness, and also got into talking about her marriage and a very powerful tool that she and her husband Pat Blaine have developed. And this cool tool is called the Together Tracker. And we had such a great response from Geeta's interview. I asked Geeta to come back and to bring Pat. And so Pat is here today to share his experience with what it's like to be married on this entrepreneurial journey, especially to a what I would call a turbocharged female entrepreneur, like so many of our listeners of the Profit by Design podcast. And Pat has graciously agreed to do that. So I want to do a formal introduction and let you know we are joined by the ultimate power couple, Pat Blaine and Geeta Nadkarni, who prove that mixing business with pleasure can actually work. Pat's the problem-solving pinball wizard who brings 15 plus years of broadcast experience to their brand, while Geeta is the face of the business and head coach. Together, they bootstrapped a multi-million-dollar coaching empire before a health crisis forced them to completely reinvent themselves. Together for over 20 years, they've channeled their wisdom into creating the Together Tracker, a revolutionary tool that helps couples become investors in each other's growth. They originally invented it for themselves, saving their then 18-year marriage and going from disconnected to madly in love. From Geeta's groundbreaking 80-20 approach to Pat's talent for holding everything together when, as he puts it, the doo-doo hits the fan, they're here to show us how working smarter, not harder, can transform our relationships and our lives. So please welcome Pat and Geeta.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks. It's fun to be here.
We are delighted. So, Pat and Geeta, when people find out that you work together, what's the most common question they ask you?
Well, you want to go?
No, you do it.
I think that the most common
Let's see if it's the
is,
same question.
how have you not killed each other yet?
It's that question.
I think it's always like, as in, I think it's a well-known fact that, like, as in, when you're married to someone and then you work with them on top of everything, it brings its all set of dynamics, because obviously you got family life to manage, and then you're working with your better half, right? So it brings this added layer of possible complication, but it depends on how you're navigating it, I guess.
Yeah, I like to say that first of all, we're very different from each other. So we're wired very differently. We in many ways they say opposites attract. That's very true to us. And like Pat's very organized. He's minimalist. He's, like he thinks ahead. He's super punctual. And I'm literally like I'm creative chaos. And so that aspect, coupled with the fact that in our entrepreneurial life, and pretty much since the beginning, because I've always been sort of the on-camera public face type person. I'm a performer. I'm like, that's kind of my speed. And he's more in the background, navigating the gender dynamics that have come up because of that, where, he becomes kind of Mr. Nadkarni, and he becomes a kind of auxiliary piece of the puzzle, which is traditionally a female role. Mm-hmm. And then, I become the front man. It's been really, the thing that I like to say is like, most couples who work separately from each other they have some kind of carpet under which they can sweep some stuff. Like the fact that we work together, it's all hardwood floor. There's no carpet under which to sweep anything. It's all out in the open 24/7. So if we didn't deal with it, we were pretty much always stepping on Legos.
Well, and then I might just add one thing to the question that people might ask us, and the follow-up answer that I usually give is that if you're most likely, if you're vulnerable enough to be able to recognize your flaws and your it's inspiring to be working with someone who's that inspired to go forward and to be able to break out things and to try stuff. But it's also a challenge because you need to be honest with yourself that if you're triggered by something, it's not just because of your own personal story that you're bringing. You need to be, see, I qualify myself more as an intrapreneur than an entrepreneur, but I think that it has evolved. This definition has changed over time. But the fact of the matter is that it can be very inspiring to be with someone who is such a powerhouse. And if you see it from that perspective, then you can fuel yourself with that if you're able to be vulnerable in your own learning journey.
I hear in that, Pat, that both of you have really embraced that you have different strengths that you are bringing into the relationship, your marriage and your working relationship. And rather than feel like somehow someone is less than because they're not as good at something as something the other does, it's more like let's work together and let's bring our strengths together. So I'm very curious, Pat, from your perspective, working with and being married to, like, Geeta is a turbocharged female entrepreneur, like so many of us are. What pointers do you have for significant others of these turbocharged entrepreneurs?
Well, I think that the first indicator of that is, even as in she was that turbocharged person even before we started like our entrepreneurial journey. So I mean, I had some pointers already from the beginning of how she is in the world. It's not a surprise to me. And I think the best way to see this is to, I think that for me, an entrepreneurial journey starts with a personal journey, because everything that is framed in that mindset of being entrepreneurial needs to be brought to the personal life. Is to be able to go forward, try things, and fail miserably and get up again and try again. And I think that the best approach to see that, for me anyway, at this point in my life, is to be able to recognize that it's not going to be perfect. And my first instinct when I was working for the CBC, when I was working for any other broadcaster before, is that I'm working for someone else, and therefore it's easy to not break anything. My goal was to not break anything, to make things work on time. I still bring that to our relationship, but I have to adjust and trust that my value and what I bring to the table is also being embraced by my partner. Obviously, there's this constant mix, as Geeta says. There's no rug. It's like straight to the floor. So we have to have this understanding that it's not one better the other. It's basically like a chemistry. It's a holistic approach to what we have. And for this, I have to show up in this open, vulnerable way, to be seeing it for what it really is, and not feeling challenged because my wife is the front man, which at some point I might have been. I'm pretty sure that I have been at some point. And now I think that I've learned that this is such a, I need to tap into this superpower that she has. I think that would be my answer, my short answer, I guess.
That's incredible. And as you're saying all of this, one of the things that just stands out to me is there are no overnight success stories. You guys are madly in love, and you've been working on this for 20 years to be madly in love.
We're still
And
working on it.
We're still working on it. Yeah.
Still
it's never
working on it.
done. And you went through some very dark times not so long ago. And that's how the Together Tracker even came about. So let's go back to where things were maybe, 17 years, 18 years in your marriage, how they got there. I want to hear a little bit about that, what it was like, and then how you developed the Together Tracker and have really healed and continue to grow together.
So I would say that we've been through, I think when you've been married a long time, you don't have a single marriage. You have many marriages stacked back to back with some overlap in between. Like, it's a very interesting dynamic because you are so many different people. You evolve and turn into different people along the way. So there is no one marriage. The culture inside our couple has changed multiple times throughout this thing. I remember once upon a time, we've always worked together. We met on the job. So we've always had this kind of working relationship. However, when we first started working, Pat was my superior, right? Like, not my boss per se, but he was a producer and I was talent. And then that's kind of where it started. There was the structure and the rules were set by an external party, the corporation that we worked for. Then I got an opportunity to work at the CBC before he had the opportunity to work there. And then all of a sudden I had the like super sexy job and he didn't. And so then we went through that phase. And then he came over as a producer there, and then he was a director there, and then it was more equal. And so we've been through all of these different phases. And then we went through, when we had our first baby, I went from the person who made more money in our couple because I was on-air talent, to all of a sudden doing unpaid caregiving work in the home because we decided that I would stay home for the first 2 years. And that was a very interesting dynamic shift for us as well, because it brought up a whole bunch of hidden, even to us, like subconscious assumptions that we carried of like, what is how does a person contribute when it's not financial? And is there value assigned to that? And we had to like really sit down and actively think through what that meant for us, because I'd always been a financially contributing partner. And that was very much a part of my identity. And it was very much a part of how our finances worked and how we didn't negotiate things because our money was separate. And so we didn't have to. And now all of a sudden I'm like having to take permission to spend money. And I'm like, oh, I don't like this. And so, and then having our own business where I'm making a bunch of strategic decisions that affect both of our livelihoods. And so and I think once upon a time, and I think many couples, when you're younger, and this is normal, I don't think that there's anything wrong with this, but just understand what it is. When you're young and immature, I'm going to use that word very intentionally. It's not an insult. It is just in your evolution, in your journey, just like a plant is more fragile and green and soft and breakable when it's immature versus a tree. When you're immature in your relationship, you try very hard to turn the other partner into you because all you can see is your own way. We absolutely suffered from this kind of immaturity back in the day. His way worked for him and my way worked for me. And when there was any kind of friction, obviously, and I put this in inverted commas, the issue was that the other person wasn't doing it your way. And the thing that I wish we had discovered the Together Tracker freaking 18 years ago and not waited till 18 years to discover it. But yeah, you get to it when you get to it. One of the things we discovered was that the best metaphor I can use is, imagine a child who starts walking at 7 months, which is considered early, versus a child that starts walking at 14 months, which is considered late, right? At age 30, when both of those people have been walking for like 20 plus years, who cares? Like, nobody cares. It doesn't matter anymore. And that's what we came to realize. The Together Tracker helped us see that the way we approach things, the way we start things, the way we choose things, the way we go after things once it gets hard, are extremely different from each other. But we get to the finish line more or less at the same time. So instead of trying to make the other person start faster or start slower or do more or do less or do whatever, we thought, hey, what if we each supported the other person in doing it more their way, so that we could then assure each other that we would end up at the finish line at the same time. And that was huge for us. It was such a culture shift. Yeah.
Wow.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. And it creates so many more questions. So one of the things that, after reviewing the Together Tracker, that really stands out to me is you use that powerful question that we in the Tap the Potential world love so much, is what will make everything else easier or unnecessary? That's like the definition of a $10,000 an hour activity when it comes to productivity and time management as an entrepreneur in the business, applying our strengths and making other things easier or unnecessary for ourselves or others. You're taking this in the Together Tracker and you're applying this in your main relationship, but I think it has application in all of our relationships.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that. How does that work with your relationship? How do you use that question in your relationship? What are some concrete examples?
I could go first. Well, bad things about it. Like, I'll give you an example. So one of the journeys so there are 4 journeys in the Together Tracker, and these are 4 routes of self-improvement that each individual partner chooses for themselves, which means I cannot dictate what Pat's journey needs to be. Only he can choose what he believes the journey needs to be. And this is based on his vision for what he wants his life to be and what he believes the one thing is that's going to be most important to bring it up. So for example, if he feels not great in his body, then he'd be like, all right, what's the one thing I can do to help my body be, the strongest ever, right? And so then he'll figure out what that is for him. That would be one way. And then another way that we use it, like a concrete way, is the 4th journey for all couples is always connection. And the connection is broken down into 3 pieces, which is connection to self, which means I have to make sure that I am being a good partner. I am being emotionally, physically, environmentally, nutritionally, etc., supportive of my own well-being. That's my responsibility. So that's connection to self. The second is connection to each other. So we can figure out what's our 20% thing. Like, what's the one thing that really is the glue that binds us together? What is that activity? And then we break it down into an action. It's always an action. So we identify the thing and then we associate an action with it. And then that action becomes the weekly thing that we track. And then the third one is what's the one thing that helps us connect deeply to, and then you choose the stakeholders in your lives. In our case, we have 2 children. So I will ask that question separately for each child. And so I have each of us has a separate action that we do. Like what I do with my son to connect with him is quite different from what Pat does with him, because that's how their relationship is. So it honors the individuality of each aspect. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yes. And Pat, I want to hear from you. What are some examples that come up for you around this?
Well, I think that for me, the way that this shows up is really, I mean, the overarching theme. The thing that actually was creating resistance for me at first in joining the Together Tracker is that it's not about being imperfect, right? It's about just recognizing that there's place for yourself to look at yourself and improve some parts of your life and take the journeys to improve that. And so the way that it shows up in my relationship or with people around me, and as Geeta mentioned, we always talk about our children. There's always a section when we talk about connection where we refer to how we feel connected to our children based on past week experience, based on what we discussed last week. And as Geeta mentioned, we talk about how we keep that connection and we iterate, right? We try different approaches. So for my son, who's now 13, now he's a teenager, which is a very different thing than when he was 9 or 10 or 11. Now there's a whole new set of challenges with connection that comes up, because I cannot just impose an activity on him knowing that he will appreciate the activity once he's going to be there. I need to have a discussion with him. I need to engage with him. I need to get him to
invite him.
Yeah, I need to invite him to be part of that. And I just need to accept that I'm making a bid. It might not work. And then we will bring that back to our Together Tracker meeting that we have every week. The fact of the matter is that it's not perfection. It's always trying to iterate and try new things and recognize that it's a journey. It's not perfect, and it's not going to be like resolving all of the issues. Sometimes you bring something up and it resolves some issues, and it brings up so many other problems. And kids are not, I will say, a self-learning tool, because it reflects so much back at us on how we respond to them and how we interact with them, so that there's so much to learn from what we bring to the table while we're trying to improve our relationship with them. So I'm not sure. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic.
I just want to add something, especially about our son. So we've entered the sort of teenage phase where kids naturally, and it's biologically appropriate for them to start pulling away. They go from parent orientation to peer orientation. And where this is the first time it's happening to us, because this is our oldest child, right? So what we have come to realize is that there is a lot of grief in this relationship change. It's all like you're losing the child you had to make room for the child this child is turning into. And I am so grateful that we have the tracker, because what it has helped us do is grieve together, recognize the grief. Like, often grief is buried under anger. Oh, this kid is such a dick. Like, he's just not blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's just how it is. That's how it feels in the moment. They're so self-centered. It's ridiculous. Like, it's farcical, and so to come there in this bubble of calm and curiosity and compassion, to say, I know why you were mad. It's because underneath you was sad. I am sad. Oh my gosh, we're sad. And then we can hold each other in that grief. And so what I think is, and we haven't experienced it yet, but so I won't know, but what I hope and imagine will happen is that we're less likely to lose each other when our nest is empty, because we will have navigated this, all of the different seasons that are ahead of us, so intentionally and with such connection. Like, this grief has brought us closer, and it has brought us closer to each other, and it is allowing us to come up with creative, inventive ways to stay close to our son in ways that, like, real life does not prepare you for it, and real life doesn't have a whole lot of room for this kind of thinking. You're so constantly going from thing to thing to thing. There's no room to process any of it. And so I'm really just so grateful that it happens, that we have this tool in this season of life.
I just want to add the intentionality part of that. Like, if you don't save that space to have those conversations, then it's being jammed between, like, you need to go and do the grocery, you forgot butter, and then, oh my God, I'm so pissed off at this because he did that, and then it becomes just a blend of
All the
bland. Like,
things,
it's just like it's very unsatisfying. It's not there's no way of leveraging that into something else, making it feel like something else. Either it's hope, either it's like some sort of a solution, an attempt at making this better. And then having this time allows us to be hearing the grievance and the grief that we might carry about the last week or the last 6 months, and then turn this into something where we could feel empowered to take action and make something better out of it. I just wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Melissa, I want to open this up from your perspective. Melissa is a newlywed and bringing lots of life wisdom into her marriage. And so, what questions do you have?
I have so many questions. I feel like we need several episodes. My burning question is, and this is based off of my experience personally, but also things that we hear consistently from our clients or entrepreneurs that we coach in our program. Pat, tell us about your experience when Geeta first asked you to do this Together tracker, and if you can just share with us what this actually looks like in your everyday life.
Well, there's two very different tracks on this. My first response was definitely to feel guarded, right? Because it sounds like I'm being asked to admit that I'm imperfect, right? As in, I'm kind of committing to be talking about my imperfection in a context where I'm not quite sure that that's going to be playing in my favor, right? And so, without knowing and without giving it a chance, that's the first response that one might have to feel secure, right? And then and so once we realized that it was a place for us to share and to be able to work on ourselves, and once I was exposed to that, then it makes this, it's not something that we bring like during the week saying, you said that. It's very respectful in the sense that since it's anchored inside of each other in our personal journey, it's meant to be something that we reflect on a regular. As in, I'm journaling on a regular basis. I'm bringing those reflections to myself during the week, and therefore it's not meant to be like scowling each other and being like, remember what you said. And
Yeah.
and it
Can I
also
just
allows us. I just want to and it
go.
allows us to make sure that we do have touch points. So instead of losing so much time arguing on the regular basis and then trying to fix things, we know that we have that safe space to be able to discuss. This 90-minute space is for us to reconnect and to be able to touch point and talk about the challenges that we were supposed to be tackling during the week from our perspective, and the partner is there to support that. Geeta, you
Yeah.
wanted to jump in?
Yeah, just something I wanted to clarify because it may not be obvious. Because when you hear the words together tracker, people have ideas for what that might mean. They mean, first of all, the together part might make it feel like you're doing a couple oriented thing, but actually it's so kind of interesting. The together tracker creates togetherness as a byproduct because each individual is actually a solo practitioner. So whether you do it with a partner or you do the solo track, which many of our clients do, you are on a journey of self-discovery and self-improvement for yourself. And you know how Pat says, there's no like holding the other person account. Nobody holds anybody accountable. The only person you hold accountable is yourself. And then the other partner is there as a co-pilot offering support and compassion, not holding you accountable for anything. So I wanted to make that super clear. And then any tracking is done because change happens. It's like somebody says, like, how do you change somebody's mind? It's not like you take a big rock and you move it from one place to the other. It's like grains of sand. You have to take each individual grain of sand and move it, right? Behavior change is like that. You have to move individual grains of sand. It takes time. It's confronting. It's frustration. You have to deal with your impatience and your lack of control and the uncertainty and ambiguity of the situation. And high performers, I speak for myself here, I struggle with that. And so I think a lot of the changes that I've made, especially on the chronic health front, I got myself into a really deep hole trying to fix things really hard, trying to fix them fast, trying to do it bigger, better, faster, cheaper, And what actually worked really, really well was the absolute opposite, which I've come to realize is a much better operating system in general, which is stop trying to match your best day and start trying to make your worst day a tiny bit better. And that's kind of the approach that we've taken. So we look at the big thing, and then we're like, what's one tiny action that we can do when we're tired and pissed off and not in the mood? What's that action that even in that state we could commit to doing? Mm-hmm. And then we do that, and that's what we track week over week. So like, I know that when I brought up the tracker for that, it was my idea. And the dynamic we had in our relationship that used to drive me bananas was, I'm going to come up with an idea, I'm going to make an invitation, and Pat's going to say no. And then that would cause like rage and rejection and blah and disconnection and all of this jazz.
I wonder why.
I know, right? And this time we played it really differently. And I think that the invitation was not, hey, let's get in this process to fix us. It wasn't that. It wasn't even, let's get in this process to fix you. This was, let's get in this process to fix me. Mm-hmm. And that made a huge difference.
Well, not me, as in myself.
As in me, myself.
Yeah.
That was my invitation, was I am fixing
because
me.
fixing you, there's no way.
I know. We need many lifetimes for this.
Yeah, many grains of sand.
Exactly.
So, I love this, and I'm curious. I think almost all of the entrepreneurs that we serve and know that are partners, married partners, have extreme challenges shutting it off when they get home. So they work together all day and then they come home and it's like this dump of everything that went wrong during the day and everything that needs to be fixed. So Pat, Geeta, does the togetherness tracker help support eliminating some of that friction in your relationship of bringing work home?
Well, I think from my perspective, I think that it's really hard when you're working with your partner, because to shut the door like that, and obviously there has to be some safeguards. You have to be able to be careful not to talk about work like all the time. But at the same time, we're very passionate about what we're doing. And so therefore, this passion sometimes overflow the safeguards, and it bleeds over everything. I think that what the Together Tracker helped in a general sense, it's not a panacea and it's not a solution to everything, but it helps, as Geeta mentioned, to improve the 1% gradually. So basically, what I see is that when we have an argument, because we still have arguments, we're still having to discuss, and sometimes we're both very like determined.
We're both extremely stubborn.
As in, it doesn't iron out everything. I think that would be boring. That would be flat and
classic apology. I'm sorry that you're stupid.
Yeah, So, so then what I see the benefit of the tracker is that since we know that we have this habit of being vulnerable with each other, I think that it shortens the time frame of not the argument itself, but it doesn't carry all of the baggage that might be carried week over week over week over months over year. As in, since there's a touch point where we are vulnerable, and I say vulnerable not in a pejorative way, but as in a constructive way, then it allows us to remember it, and it reminds me that I could trust this person. Right? I trust Geeta to have my back, and therefore I think that like every argument that used to be, and we have also arguments that are very hard to reconcile, but I think that overall it just shortens the reconciliation process. It makes the argument less less heavy. That's my
Yeah.
perspective.
A lot of our arguments used to carry with them a sense of hopelessness of like, oh, can't believe we're arguing about this again
Mm.
for like year 15. This is year 15 of the same freaking argument. And then that would make us sort of go into, depending on the level of dysregulation and disconnection, oh, do I want to live the next 15 years with this argument? And then the answer is no. And then you're like, oh, well, shit, what does that mean? What do I have to do? Blah, blah, blah. I want to just circle. So what the Together Tracker does is now we can have the argument, and the argument remains its own thing, separate from our relationship, separate from our marriage, separate from our working relationship. It's just like, this person does not see what I mean in this one tiny context. It's manageable. I still want to pull my hair out in that meeting. I still think that, it's like, wow, why can you not see my thing? Like, I'm sure I'm trying to show it to you. But now I can go, it's so much easier to drop back into my body and be like, wait a minute, what did I miss where did I not create the safety for him to be able to see my perspective? Like, where am I not acknowledging his perspective? Therefore, he feels like he needs to fight for it. Blah, blah. Like, it's so much easier to get back into that stuff. Does that mean you never have conflict? I don't think that's healthy. The Gottmans themselves say, and I'm referring to John and Julie Gottman, who are sort of the pioneers of relationship stuff in general. They say that there is no connection without conflict. It's impossible. If you have no conflict, that means you're actually protecting yourself from having connection. Mm-hmm. But you asked a question, Melissa, that I wanted to, you said, like, how do we not let work bleed? So I'm much better at boundaries around work than Pat is. Pat is operational. So he's like, if there's a problem, he's like a pit bull. He needs to solve it. So I'll tell you what guardrails we put in place. So first of all, I'm much better. I have all my notifications are off. I have a different phone. So I don't have the same device that has any notification capability even. That phone stays in the living room. It never goes in the bedroom. I have a different phone. It has like a red filter on. It's like very unpleasant to look at the screen. I only use it for audiobooks and like my meditation app and stuff like that. And so for me, when I'm in the bedroom, it's like a completely different country. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Work? Hell no. And then if Pat really violates that, like, because sometimes he can't help himself, then I'll just stick Michael Bolton songs on his workout playlist. He'll be at the gym pumping iron, and suddenly I said I loved you, but we'll start playing, and then he'll know that
this or Kenny G, which is worse.
You got to play hardball.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I told you, I warned you, and then you didn't listen, so now you suffer. So yeah, we get creative with boundary setting.
I so appreciate the powerful questions that you threw out, that you start asking yourself, Geeta, when you notice that Pat is defensive. And so I really encourage our listeners, if you miss that, go back and listen to Geeta's self-talk, because this level of self-coaching that the Together Tracker promotes really helps us evolve into our best selves. And that means that we are showing up as our best selves in our primary relationship with our significant other, and also at work and with our children, everywhere in our lives. So as we wrap up today, and I'm sorry to wrap up because, oh my gosh, this is such a rich conversation. But as we wrap up, Geeta and Pat, please let our listeners know how they can get their hands on the Together Tracker.
So the simplest way is to just go to thetogethertracker.com. So togethertracker.com. And by the way, something we use to promote closeness in between tracker meetings is actually a totally different product. And we have it on for like a silly price right now. So it's on special. We call it 52 pocket dates. And they're these little printable cards. So you can actually print them out. And we have a set in our bedroom, we have a set on the dining table, and we have a set in the car. And it's a 10-minute conversation to basically peel back a facet of your partner that you can have been with them for 30 years and you still won't know something about them. And these questions are designed to find those little nuggets of partner that you've missed. The treasure is buried in plain sight, kind of thing. And so sometimes we'll use that. So because you brought up something so profound that I don't want to drop, Melissa, which is if you constantly dump problems on your partner, or your partner becomes a visual cue of your to-do list, which is really easy to fall into when you work together.
Yes.
Because literally you see your partner's face and you're like, oh my God, all the things that I need to get fixed, and I need to remind you, and you need to remind me, and blah, 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 all of this stuff. That is what disconnection is. Like, that is what is the primary driver of disconnection. So we understood that, and we realized that the more stressful work is, or the world is, or the situation is, for whatever reason, the more we have to lean on. That's why we have like physical tools like the 52 pocket dates, where we're like, I may not have the creativity in this moment because I'm dysregulated. I'm a big believer in, I'm not going to try and willpower my way or change who I am in this moment. I'm going to design for my shittiest day, right? I'm going to design for the day, but I don't have the creativity. I don't have the passion. I don't like your face, and I don't want to do any of the things on my to-do list. So that's when we'll pull a card and be like, all right, answer this question. Like, if you had to design an app, what app would you design and why? And now all of a sudden our brains are led in a totally different direction. Suddenly we're playing again. And I think that's what connection is all about. It's about play. It's invitations to play. That's what we do all day when we're dating somebody. All we want to do is play. Work takes a backseat, sleep takes a backseat. All we want to do is play. And when we get into that relationship, what do we drop? First thing we drop is play. And then we wonder how we got there.
And it's very disarming. And it's very disarming to be hearing a question from a deck, because it really just like it forces you to think differently. Like it takes you out of that comfortable like anger or resentment that you're in at that point because of the argument or the week or the day that you have. And then it just forces you to be, oh, okay, well, let me think about that question for a second. And then obviously the person who's asking the question is maybe not interested as much at first, but then they're putting something to just, bring a different dynamic. And therefore, by default, there's a different dynamic that's set like automatically.
Melissa, I have to just say, I'm thinking about our clients in the Better Business, Better Life program, and faces are popping in my mind of who could benefit from this. And I think about like when we do our quarterly goal setting, our clients get to set one business goal and one personal goal. And oftentimes relationships and partnerships and improving those are the big personal goals. And so, Melissa, I'm really curious as this episode airs to hear our clients taking on the pocket dates and the together tracker in their personal goals, and the impact that's going to have in the Better Business, Better Life program.
I think it's going to make a massive impact. The two of you are absolutely fabulous. Pat, you are our hero. We adore you. And I'm not even going to wait till this podcast airs. I'm going to send off this live episode to all of our clients, because I think it would make a massive impact in the personal lives and business lives of all of anyone who's tuning in here. This togetherness tracker is going to make a massive improvement in everyone's lives. So thank you both so much for being here today. I wish we could have more and more of you. We appreciate all of the value that you have brought to everyone listening.
And thank you for inviting us, and invite us again. We'll gladly, like, it's a fun time to be reflecting. Yeah.
Well, I have an idea that we may have some clients come on for Q&A with you guys.
Ooh, nice.
But I want them to try the Together Tracker first, and then we'll invite a few clients.
That'd be great. And we're actually about to launch a membership program where people who do purchase the Together Tracker and are interested in this journey of deepening because ultimately this is all about getting to know yourself, not your partner, not your couple, not changing anybody else, but just like not even changing anything, just understanding yourself. Like that was ultimately what I realized this journey was all about. If I do that, that's my 20%. If I do that well, pretty much everything else takes care of itself. Everything else is improved. Everything else becomes unnecessary, etc. And so if anyone's interested, we haven't even launched it yet. So like you guys are the first public people to hear about this. We call it Power Partners. And it's all about identifying, and it's not a whole bunch of content to consume. It's not one of those like memberships where it's like, oh, look at this library of 300 hours of stuff you'll never get to. It's like, what's one 5-minute action you do all month this month? So you have a monthly challenge, and it's only if you do it and share an insight about it. And even if you fail at doing it, you will still have insight. So tell us why you failed at doing it. Like whatever it is that it reveals, because the goal is to get to know yourself. Then you unlock a learning journey. Then you unlock something that helps you make that action better and helps you understand the psychology behind the action, helps you understand how to use that action in different contexts, etc. This is how I learn. And so I was like, I wonder what it would be like if we just created this, put this learning system out there. And we've done it in the context of business, and it's doing really well in our business community, our possibility circle. But I figured, what if we did this in a relationship context? And it costs at the moment, the way we're thinking to price it, like $59-$69 a month, which is less than a third of a single therapy session. And you get to be your own therapist.
Yeah. And that we're going to end right there. Be your own therapist, because when we learn how to do that,
it's game changing.
We're on our own journeys. And so we're going to bookmark this, and there's more conversations with Geeta and Pat to be continued on
Thank
the
you so
Profit by
much.
Design podcast.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.